Real food or sports nutrition? High carb or just electrolytes? How much water do I really need for a 50-mile ride? And how on earth am I gonna carry all the food and drink I need for my long gravel rides? In today's episode of Gravel Must-Haves, I'm gonna answer all of these questions and more as we dive into hydration and nutrition. Be sure to stick around till the end where I have a couple bonus secrets I think you'll really enjoy. Welcome back to Queer Gravel. Full disclosure, I did receive a few of the things that I'm gonna talk about today from the brands themselves, but I am not being paid to talk about any of these things, and all opinions are my own. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start with nutrition, the food that we eat on the ride. Should we have real food or this sports nutrition? Now, there are definitely pros and cons to both. I tend to lean towards bringing sports nutrition with me on rides for several reasons. One, it's easier to pack and carry. Most of it's already prepackaged. It's very easy to eat. It's also specifically designed to be very easy to digest. Generally speaking, I would prefer to eat real food on longer rides, but you can't always guarantee that that's gonna be available. So then the question comes, what kind of sports nutrition is best? I personally don't like the gels. So when I lean towards sports nutrition, I focus on things that I can actually chew, like these Goo chews are super handy. I also really love the new stroopwafel trend in sports nutrition. These are incredible. They come in a variety of flavors. You can get them with caffeine, without caffeine, really whatever you need. And these are usually what I rely on longer rides where I know that services and refuel points are gonna be harder to find. I like them because they're very easy to slip in a jersey pocket. The servings are already portioned out, so I have a strong understanding of how many calories, carbs, how much caffeine, etc. are all going into my body during the ride. The one downfall with sports nutrition is that it is all pre-packaged, which means there is a lot of waste. That can be mitigated though through TerraCycle. Most recycling units can't take these sorts of packaging, but TerraCycle can and will. So definitely check out TerraCycle.com. I'll have all the links in the description below. Once you know what you're gonna be eating, the next question is how much and how often. Before a big ride, eating a solid breakfast 2 hours before the start of the ride, then having something like this 5 minutes before you start, and then every 45 minutes. Now, this has worked out for me very, very well. You're gonna have to find what works best for you, but this every 45 minutes is a great place to start until you figure out what's really your jam. Once you know what you're eating, how much you're eating, you need to know how you're gonna carry it. I do enjoy sports nutrition because it's very easy to slip into a jersey pocket without too much trouble, but I find for me, if it's in my jersey pocket, I don't see it, so I don't think about it. I will forget if it's not right in my face. So I like to use the Revelate Designs MagSafe top tube bag. Super great if you're like me and forget to eat if something's behind you. Once we've covered our bases with nutrition, it's time to move on to hydration. Do we want to rely on water or some sort of high carb or electrolyte drink mix? The answer depends on your body and your ride. For me, typically, if the ride is really short, I will stick with just water in my bottles. For longer rides though, I will always take both water and some sort of drink mix. Now, I always have water with me even on longer rides for several reasons. One, sometimes you just get sick of drinking mix, and so you want to have something to kind of refresh your mouth and your stomach. Also, with all of the sugar and whatnot that endurance athletes eat and drink, you are actually at a much higher risk for things like cavities and gum disease, and so having water to rinse your mouth out at least every now and again can be really helpful and save you a lot of money and time and heartache in dentist appointments later. And of course, there's also an emergency component that most people don't think about, and that is first aid. So if something were to happen and there was a wound that needed to be cleaned out, water is really the only thing you should be using. Water will help to clean wounds. It can be used to help cool people off if they're experiencing heat stroke or something of the like. So having water with you, regardless of how long or short the ride is super important. But on these longer rides, there's a question of what kind of mix do we want to take? There are things that are super high carb, high calorie. There are things that are lower calorie and just focus on electrolytes. For me, typically, if the ride is what I would call mid-long, anywhere from 40 to 60 miles, I might just stay with an electrolyte drink. something like these Goo Energy Tabs. These come in a 12 serving bottle like this, or a single serving pouch, which I usually keep 1 or 2 of these in my bike bag at all times, just in case I get into a situation or I get around somebody who's in a situation where they need that extra boost of electrolytes and they don't have anything else on them. If the ride is hotter, I will definitely lean towards this, unless it's going to be what I would call a longer ride. 60 plus miles, I will almost always have some sort of high carb, high calorie, and high electrolyte drink. You don't always need the high carb, high calorie part, but I like to make sure I have it on really long rides just to make sure I'm keeping up with eating and I'm filling in any of the gaps that I might have missed while riding. These drink mixes are made by all sorts of companies. I love the Goo Lemon Berry. This is what I drink most of the time. There are other flavors with or without caffeine, but I like this because it's a fair amount of calories in every serving, but it's not over the top. So it's not overly syrupy or anything like that. When you mix it the way it's recommended, it's actually a fairly light drink, maybe even a little bit lighter than like your standard Gatorade, which I enjoy. Once you know what you're carrying, it's going to be important to know how much. This is another one of those things that's going to be very dependent on your body and the ride that you're on. Some people can get away with longer rides only taking a couple bottles. If you're like me and you're a little bit slower, you may have to carry more because you're spending more time out on the bike and more time between checkpoints or gas stations or what have you. I always have at least 1 bottle with me. Something like this. I actually got this at Unbound this year. This was in the swag bag. This is from Polar Bottle, and these are actually really cool. You want to make sure that you have a bottle you can squeeze when you're out on a longer ride, especially with gravel. It goes back to those emergency situations and first aid things. These are handy. You can squeeze the water. You don't have to use as much to get the wound clean, to get whatever gravel or dirt out of there. I have actually had to do this several times out on course, and having a water bottle that you can squeeze is a huge help. The other great thing about these Polar bottles is that they are insulated and they actually work surprisingly well. The other, maybe most important thing, and the reason why I really think you should check these out, is because they have this. This cap is a lifesaver when it comes to gravel. Having something to cover your spout of your bottle can not only save you from getting a mouthful of mud, but it can also keep you healthier. Most of the time when we're riding out far into pastures, etc., the mud that we're getting on our bikes isn't just mud, and we really don't want all of that other stuff going into our bodies. It will make you sick. So having your cap covered is super, super, super important if you're riding gravel. Now, if I'm riding a longer ride, bottles might not be enough. So what I turn to is a frame bag and a hydration bladder. This is the Hydra Pack Seeker. I have the 4-liter, but it comes in several sizes, so you could find which one works best for you. It's actually very versatile and easy to get into all different size frame bags. It has a much smaller piece of plastic. So this is actually very easy to maneuver into whatever size or shape frame bag you have. And so you can fill the bag as much as you need to and still be able to maneuver this well, even into a tighter space. The hose is a quick release, which means that it's easy to swap out if you have your hose kind of running through your frame bag and up into your handlebars. You can swap the bladder out easily at a checkpoint if you need to without having to take the whole hose off and then run it back. It makes it very easy and very simple. I always recommend, if you're going to use a hydration bladder, get at least a half liter higher than you think you might need, and sometimes even a whole liter larger than you think you might need. Because when you're putting water in a frame bag, the more full your hydration bladder is, the more rigid and hard to maneuver it is. So if you size up, suddenly the water is more fluid, more bendable, more flexible, and it's easier to shove into strange shaped bags like a frame bag. So there you have it, folks. This is how I make sure I have everything I need to get home and make my ride a success. So it's important that you take this information, try it on, see what works, and leave what doesn't. And for that bonus tip I mentioned at the end, you don't want to forget about your recovery drink. So after the ride has already happened, what are you doing to refuel, to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success and to ride well tomorrow? Lots of folks like things like this, a recovery mix that you can mix with water or coffee or some sort of milk. But then there's also maybe the most well-known recovery beverage, and that is the post-ride beer. Now, if you've ever been on a gravel ride with a group or been to a gravel event, you know that the post-ride beer is kind of a sacred experience. But the problem is all the studies show that alcohol is an inhibitor of athletic performance. So if you want to be able to engage in this sacred ritual, but you still want to ride well tomorrow, you should check out Athletic Brewing. This is an incredible non-alcoholic beer. Whatever kind of style you like, they make. Literally anything you could dream of, they make it, and it tastes delicious, and you wouldn't even know that there's no alcohol in it. So I do have a discount code down in the comments below. If you want to try Athletic, use code ABBY20 for 20% off your online order. Click the link in the description below to check it out. Thank you all so much for staying and hanging out, and I will see y'all in the next one.